Because the one thing everybody knows is that if you make a mistake, the money's gone. And all of these attacks that we currently read about and that people are so fearful of are because an option exists to restore that power of freedom to 8.3 billion people.
We're missing a sense of urgency. People are not understanding what we are fighting against and what is coming at all of us.
People are willing to trade their eyeballs for, a free, free $5 or something.
In my opinion, everyone must do this. If your money is in a bank, you will be forced into a cage that you will not be able to come out of. A lot of people, unfortunately, are only going to believe this when their turn comes to lose access to whatever funds they think they have and own. Because if you don't do this, the alternative is very dire.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming so late in the day. I know that it's like one of the last talks on a Saturday, so it's really appreciated that you're here. So I've just come back from the Oslo Freedom Forum, and I was writing about freedom tech and digital authoritarianism. And one thing that really struck me, that when I was listening to the activists talking, there were so many problems, and the oppression around the world really struck me. I think 72% of the world is under some sort of authoritarian regime, that we may not feel the pain, but it definitely exists. But what really struck me is that for every problem that they had, there was a solution. So when your government shut you down, when your communications are stopped, when the platform debanks you, there are brilliant people out there that are building really fantastic solutions. And another thing that I wanted to cover was that CBDCs may not show up in the way that you expect them to. There are also things called stablecoins. So a CBDC would be a government-issued money, whereas a stablecoin is on a private platform. But they both do the same thing. They both collect your data, and they both surveil you in the same way. They can be stopped and censored. So we just have to be mindful that there is more than one threat out there. But we're not going to necessarily talk about how awful CBDCs are. We're going to talk about how you can actually protect against them. And that's why we have this awesome panel to discuss it. So starting with Tony, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Tony, co-founder of the Bitcoin Way, and our specialty is removing the anxiety behind learning about how to self-custody your Bitcoin. It's not hard, it's not rocket science, and anyone can learn a few steps and repeat them a few times and do this like they've been doing it, their entire life. And so this is what we do all day long. That personal cybersecurity with jurisdictional optionality to build the perfect, most bulletproof, sovereign individual possible.
One of the things that drives me insane is that people say, I've got nothing to hide.
Right.
And they're just not paying attention to the dangers that are actually present and exacerbated. They're getting worse. It's almost speeding up. So, Tony, what does good Bitcoin self-custody look like, and how can we get ordinary people to understand this?
Proper Bitcoin self-custody starts with the understanding of why you need to be in full control of your money. Because if you're not, eventually it'll stop belonging to you. And so this is not an afternoon hobby or a side project. For the first time in history, every individual can become their own bank. And self-custody is building the blocks to secure that bank. And so the elements that are required, they come from the tech world. And most people are uncomfortable in that space. And that's understandable. Because the one thing everybody knows is that if you make a mistake, the money's gone. That is a valid concern.
Yep.
But it's not something that should prevent you or scare you from even trying. Because when it's explained to you properly, it's not rocket science, it's not nuclear physics, it's just new. 7, 8 steps, repeat them a few times, know which hardware and software to use, master these skills, and before you know it, it becomes as autopilot as making a cup of coffee. But at the end of the day, you want 100% control over the elixir of your life, which is your money. Because if you don't have that, it will be taken away from you. And all of these attacks that we currently read about and that people are so fearful of are because an option exists to restore that power of freedom to 8.3 billion people. And those who have been in power, accustomed to simple extraction with no resistance, now don't know what to do. So the worse their attacks get, it's because their level of fear is increasing. And it's increasing because the options to render their efforts irrelevant are becoming more prevalent. Every individual can learn self-custody, bar none. Whether you come from a tech background or not, it doesn't matter. Anyone can do this. And in my opinion, everyone must do this, because the way things are headed, if you are not in full control of your time and energy, you will be forced into a cage that you will not be able to come out of, at least not easily or at a very, very cheap price.
Are you able to explain to people why it's important? Because most people are used to third parties looking after their money for them. It's so natural for them. The idea that you take full responsibility for yourself is actually an alien concept. Do you find that it's easier to explain it to certain people depending on where they are in the world?
Absolutely. Usually people who understand the importance of self-custody have experienced something really, really bad. Either it's being completely locked out of their bank account or discovering that access can be restricted at any given moment for any given reason. The dependence on third party, that was a lie that we were born into. The fact that we need to normalize someone else taking care of our time and energy and then deciding whether we can have access to it, and worse, in some cases, deciding what we can do with it, is absurd. We don't need to live in that world anymore. The options exist for all of us to decide what we are going to do with our time and energy. This is our money. We work for it. No one has the right to dictate where we spend it, how we spend it, with who we spend it, and how much of it we have. That is everybody's God-given right to their own privacy. And so some people will learn this through education and forward thinking. A lot of people, unfortunately, are only going to believe this when their turn comes to lose access to whatever funds they think they have and own. If your money is in a bank, one, you don't own money, you own a worthless piece of paper. And two, it's not yours. It belongs to the bank, and as long as you comply with whatever that bank wants, maybe they give you access to it. And if you don't believe this, go to your bank and ask them to withdraw any amount of money. And then go through that lovely adventure with them, and then you'll understand why self-custody is the final destination for anyone who values their freedom.
Yes! So I had to go and take some money out of a bank, and the lady was asking me what I wanted it for, and I didn't want to tell her. So I said that I was researching central bank digital currencies, explained what programmable money was, said I wanted to see if I could live off cash for the next 3 months, gave her a massive lecture. She just gave it to me.
That's a good strategy.
I just thought, I'll educate you, bore you at the same time, and then you'll just cave.
Yeah.
It worked. So, Viliam, why should people build peer-to-peer alternatives before they really need it, before the urgency kicks in?
I think, here's the thing. In Czech Republic specifically, we like this term like a cooking a frog or boiling a frog. And the point is basically you have a frog in a pot with the water that actually raising the temperature, and you're literally cooking the frog. The frog does not really realize that until the point when it's way too late to actually get out. And this is the importance of building that network during the normal times, So right now, basically the entry barrier is really low. The timing is really critical when to start, and we always have to think about the network compounds over time. So the more people get into the network, the more people you have connected in your community, basically the stronger it becomes in the times when you need it. So in practice, you don't really kind of like make new neighbors and friends during the crisis. You do that before the crisis actually happens. There is this urgency. Plus, I mean, you at the same time you are building a parallel track, regardless of what system decides to do next. So it's not only for the bad times or for the crisis. It's actually you can do and leverage it already in practice. You can. It's not. It's about optionality. So about the possibility to use also different ways, either when it comes to acquiring, for example, a Bitcoin, or just just trading with people, or exchanging with people, or just meeting new people and strengthening those communities. So I think it's really important to think from the time perspective.
Have you managed to onboard any family members?
I do my best. I have already a couple of family members that were onboarded. Explain very well, like, why not KYC? Why there's no KYC way, peer-to-peer, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I get told not to ruin a nice evening by talking about Bitcoin. Leah, how do we make privacy normal and rather than extreme?
A great question. I think that, honestly, the first piece of it is shifting the narrative, maybe from privacy being about secrecy to it being about boundaries. And, we talk a lot about how people think, oh, I have nothing to hide. But ultimately, I think that understanding that it's not about trying to be secret. I mean, it's normal. We keep things private all the time in our life. We have blinds in our home. There's a lot of things you might not want everyone to see. And I think that shifting that narrative to being a little bit more about there being boundaries is important. And we've got some good music going on. Oh, that's the rain.
Oh, it's rain.
Wow. Okay.
Is that rain?
I think so.
Uh-oh. At least you've got my umbrella, thank you.
But also, I think that, honestly, making privacy cool again. I think that shifting that narrative is so important, because obviously there are so many privacy tools and options that people can have, but just shifting that initial narrative from it being a fringe kind of weird thing to being something that is actually valuable and something that you want. What's cooler than everyone knowing your next move and knowing what you're doing is nobody knowing what you're doing. I think that's cool.
But how have we got here? Why is it that the idea of privacy has become almost demonized?
I think convenience.
Right, always, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people are willing to trade their eyeballs for, a free, free $5 or something.
Worldcoin.
Yeah, exactly.
I went to find one of those orbs in Shoreditch, and there were people queuing up, and it was 50 Worldcoin that you got, and it was the equivalent, I think, of $50, but it's gone down to about 2 now. And I couldn't believe it. I wouldn't take my sunglasses off when I was in the room. I'm like, I don't know about this. Tony, what is the biggest mistake people make when they move from custodial Bitcoin into self-custody?
It's not really understanding the steps. If you're not a technical person, and if you think you're just going to go watch like a 3-minute video and expect not to make a mistake, you're playing Russian roulette. Self-custody is not hard, but it needs to be done in proper order in order to avoid, that oops moment that is a one-way street. The tools are very easy. They're continuing to get simplified. Privacy will become normalized again because the tools enforcing them are simpler to grasp. In my opinion, that's how privacy becomes, cool again. But people have forgotten that they have the right to tell others it's none of your business. There isn't a group of people who somehow have the de facto right to know everything about you. So in the same way you can tell a random stranger, this doesn't concern you. Your money is just as private, and your right to privacy to it is your God-given right. And so people need to remember that that is important. And there are tools out there that'll put that power back in your hands. And you shouldn't feel guilty or fearful about using them. That's what they're for. Because if you don't do this, the alternative is very dire. And again, it comes because of the loss of control of a system that has always been in control. And for the first time ever, they are threatened by something they cannot stop. And the more they try, the more unstoppable these tools become. But these tools are useless if no one has the courage to use them. Your freedom depends on taking that first step.
Yeah, absolutely. Efrat,
Can I add something to what Leah said just before?
of course you can.
'Cause you were asking her, how did we end up here? How did we get
Yeah,
to
yeah,
this
yeah.
stage? And you're saying convenience, which I agree, but there is more on top of that. And that's where I just want to stress. I think we are too comfortable with how things are for us in our lives right now. And I don't want to blackpill anyone. That's not my intention. It's never my intention. If you watch my podcast, you know I want to bring solutions. But I think we are missing, and I think Tony will agree with me, we're missing a sense of urgency. People are not fucking understanding what we are fighting against and what is coming at all of us, no matter where you're from, no matter your social economic situation, no matter what kind of fancy technology you have or the latest whatever car, or it does not matter. Everyone's going to feel the pain at one point. And I know because I'm feeling the pain. Tony has felt the pain before. We are feeling the pain. Like the whole of Czech Republic has felt this pain before. History has felt that pain before. The question is, are you really aware that they are working, when I say they, right? The powers that shouldn't be are working actively to create that convenience for you so that you don't pay attention what's going on. Because this is the time for us to be super alert and super aware about our surroundings, about the fact that it's not just that it's convenient to use it, so that's why we use it, but there's also an active agenda to keep us blind or docile or numb when it comes to just understanding that everything is engineered. The money is engineered, the food is engineered, the fucking weather is engineered, like everything is engineered right now. If you're not sharp enough and switched on and brave, as you said, to take the courage to say, you know what, that smells bad, that doesn't work, something's wrong here, I have to do something about it, and then you get into action and change something in your life. And we hate change, and that's how we got here, because people don't want to change, because people don't want to do the work, because we're a bit lazy, we're too comfortable. So I'm missing a sense of urgency, and that's just what I wanted to add.
Are we?
Thank you.
Are we too comfortable? Or is it just that people don't understand? Because one of the biggest concerns I have is that our policymakers actually think they're doing the right thing. And I find that terrifying. They all consider themselves to be good people who are doing everything that they can to protect their constituents without really fully realizing the damage that they're causing.
Some of them do. I am not in the camp that says all humans are good humans. Maybe they think they are, but I think that there are humans that are participating actively in changing the world order and the way we live and introducing new things for us without asking us if we want this or not, if it's good for us or not. So I think that it's our duty to stand up and say, sorry, that doesn't work. We're not going to have that. I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to talk. I'm going to use my voice. If all I can do is use my voice, that's what I'm going to do. But if I can learn about Bitcoin, if I can teach other people, if I can write code, if I can educate, right, I'll do what I can in order to be the one taking responsibility and saying that stops with me. That doesn't enter my boundaries, my family, my kids, whatever it is. I think that's our responsibility.
So how do people stay resilient when they are being coerced?
Okay, so I've been experiencing a lot of coercion and pressure in the last few years when it comes to censorship, when it comes to deplatforming or, debanking and things like that. And for that, I am looking at sovereignty in all these layers that I mentioned before. But also, as I said, it starts with the awareness, with being willing to take the responsibility and then to make a change in your life and take action. And then, as Viliam said before, you build what you need to have, just imagining how life could be before you actually get to the worst situation. Okay, so you build the community, you build the tools, you prepare stuff, and I'm not a prepper, I don't have food hidden anywhere, but, I appreciate people that do, and I think guys that could have weapons should have weapons, for example. I really think that we're at that critical point in time where we really have to defend ourselves. So education, preparing yourselves, building the community. You know, I go around the world and I'm a nomad, so I visit different communities, different countries, different places, and I assess for myself all the time, would this be a good enough place for me to settle down again? Is that the kind of environment that I can see myself living in with less oppression? There is no perfect. It's very hard to find the perfect places, but for yourself, you will have your checklist and you'll know, is this a good enough place for me? Does it tick most of my boxes, and can I see myself being here if I have to move, for example? So that's me.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll add to that because of my personal experience.
Yes.
Don't expect everyone to do what you want or what you believe in. There are two types of people in this world as far as I'm concerned. They're the leaders and they're the followers. The followers aren't necessarily bad people. They just don't have the confidence to take the first step. Everyone can be the leader in their own inner circle. And if you believe in your heart of hearts that you are doing the right things and you're leading by example, your results will be what gets them to FOMO in and follow along. I know this because I had this in my own family. Most of them stayed behind. Most of them tried to make me feel guilty for leaving, even though I was just as flatlined as they all were. The difference was, I knew that if I stayed behind, I was going to remain decimated, just like they are today. The right decision is not an emotional one, it's a logical one. And the only way you make it is by educating yourself and becoming aware of all the options that are available to you. Being a leader is not always a popular contest. It's a lonely journey at first, but it's worth it, because in the end, you get everybody on your side because they see, you know, the end game, the end result. And it's up to each and every one of us to be, you know, the first mover in our own inner circle for the sake of the other ones.
Yes.
So, Viliam, finance is permissioned. Vexl obviously is not. Mm-hmm. So, how do we make Bitcoin so normal that people just come to Vexl and decide that they don't want this centralized finance anymore?
We don't have to. That's one angle. I explain. When we started with Vexl, I mean, the original intention was to build something, you know, a place where you can safely trade Bitcoin. What happened next is something really naturally growed out of that. So people they started with the Bitcoin, but then it somehow got to the point where we started to get the stories about people exchanging or buying, you know, Christmas cookies or kombucha or honey and stuff like that. They really started to use it in a slightly different way that we originally intended, in a great way. And this is it. I mean, it was the tool that is built for you when you need it, but at the same time, they found a completely different purpose, how to actually the app can be used. But to your question, basically, to make it happen, I'd say it has to be easy, it has to be social, and it has to work. The easy part, I think we are already getting there. I mean, the kind of like the technical difficulties or barrier is really decreasing. Meaning, so it's not that hard to use the tools. You have so many tools currently available. You can start, you know, just with the first one. You don't need to kind of like develop the plan and then start actually exploring. The second one is something that I consider, obviously, from the community perspective, to be crucial, right? That's the social aspect. So to already have that in place, have the connection, have the network, and then deploy it when you need it. And then it has to work. Well, yeah, I mean, you already, if you have the first two in the place, people using it, you know, you have already that experience, and you are kind of like pushing it through. I think that and I'd like to connect to the previous conversation about the privacy as well. I also got into the whole topic, or the rabbit hole, kind of, based on my personal experience. And this is what people don't realize. I mean, this is not just the topic of Bitcoin, you know. I mean, we talk about that a lot, but just look outside. I mean, all of those cases of social engineering, for instance, that's the case I experience in my family, you know. This is exactly a practical example, like why do you have to actually give away your data, your information in your day-to-day life? You go to different platforms, you go to e-shops, to e-commerce, etc., and you're actually just voluntarily handing out all your data, where you live, what's your phone number, what's your name. You don't have to. And that's important to always keep in mind when it comes to privacy, and also those communities, because communities, there you can actually start kind of like developing that level of trust.
And it will be less convenient to try to not give your data. It will be harder to not give your data and say, no, I resist. It will be harder, but it's worth the effort. It's worth the energy, because you're not selling your soul that way. You're not like, okay, I'll go on without it. You know, big deal. What are they going to do to me? Before you know it, you are the frog, right?
Exactly.
It is worth it, but I think another reason why I don't think it's happening is because people are time poor, and that's where the convenience comes in. We just don't have, people don't have enough time to put the effort in. I mean, obviously if they understood the importance, they would, but there's another gap as well.
Well, they do, and the ones watching on YouTube, they're putting the time to come here to Prague to learn about these things and to watch this panel online, so they clearly want to get, you know, a better situation in their lives, and the ones that we're being corralled to. So kudos to those people that are taking action, you know?
Yeah. Why is peer-to-peer exchanges, why are they important in a world of excessive KYC and surveillance?
That's a really great question, my favorite one. So thank you. Basically, with KYC, you know, KYC does not create just a record. KYC creates dependency. So every time when you go and you use platform to, for instance, buy Bitcoin, you basically are dependent that that platform stay, you know, open, exist. It's not pressured. It's not hacked. So there is always a middleman in the side that you have to trust. With peer-to-peer, it really removes that point of failure. Basically, it actually translates the trust to the counterparty. And I think this is extremely important to realize for a lot of people. Now, talking about the CBDC, this is our panel. This is like CBDC in like practice, in the most simplest form, is programmable money, right? And now imagine, I mean, this morning it was a great example exactly of this centralization, you know, and being dependent on the platform, Anthropic. They came out this morning, right? I mean, the fable that was yesterday, I was just playing with it, you know, in the evening. Then you wake up in the morning and then suddenly you realize, I cannot use that anymore. Because US government decided it's just not, you know, it's not for you. It's for us. And this is it. If you decide to go and use these platforms, this is the risk you are undertaking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so, Leah, what do people misunderstand about privacy when they think holding Bitcoin is just enough?
Well, holding Bitcoin is enough, let's be honest.
Is it though if it's in an ETF or if it's on an exchange? I mean, there are third-party risks involved. And
absolutely, yeah. So I think that one of the things that people, especially when they're new to Bitcoin, that misunderstand is the difference between pseudo-anonymity and privacy. And really, they think maybe what they're doing is a little bit more private than it actually is. And obviously, you mentioned ETFs and centralized exchanges. And I think there is a real lack of education around self-custody and the importance of that. And I think that that kind of also ties into something in general that I think people misunderstand about privacy, which is this fallacy that I'm not important enough to target, or I'm not important enough for them to care. And if you wait until it's too late for you to start implementing some of these more, you know, privacy-friendly ways of living, then you know, we see, obviously, you were at the Oslo Freedom Forum, and you saw a lot of stories of people who actually truly need a lot of this freedom tech. And so I think there's just a real need for education around that and how it actually is something that matters.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think that the education aspect is getting through to people? Do you think they're starting to understand? Are you seeing things move in the right direction?
You know, it's interesting because I think that people don't often take the time to learn about something until they need to, right? And so that is always kind of the tricky thing. But I do think that there is a shift in people realizing that, hey, maybe we've given over too much of our data, maybe we've given over too much of our personal information, especially in the age of AI. You know, you're starting to see how easy it is to, do all these deep fake things. And so I think people are starting to realize, wow, this is actually a little bit scary, and are starting to pay attention a little bit more.
And I think with the excessive KYC and all of the hacks that are happening, I mean, there's a new hack almost every single week. It's not hypothetical anymore. It's actually happening. And like Joe said in his introduction, it's actually putting people at risk. So Efrat, Bitcoin gives people an exit to the monetary system when they're under these kind of conditions. But for most people's identity, the voice, and their access, it still runs through centralized rails, and they probably don't realize how much they're giving away. So where does resistance go from here?
Right, so that's part of what I showed in my presentation a few hours ago, that when you start feeling the same pressure that the monetary system is putting on us all the time, but now when it comes to your distribution channels, to just expressing your voice, just free speech, when all of that becomes so complicated and you feel that pain, you start thinking, hold on, how do I reclaim my power and my sovereignty in those areas of my lives, not just the monetary side? I mean, here most of us are Bitcoiners, so we kind of take it for granted already that we're kind of safe because we have taken self-custody or we have done the homework and we know how to protect ourselves in that sense. But when it comes to everything else, we may have not started to think about our sovereignty there. And that's where I started thinking about how can we create sovereignty in every area of our lives. Money was the first domino, but when it comes to everything else, we need to start thinking about our identity, our access to the internet. When I'm saying identity on the digital front, it's the access, because basically they're going to firewall us from everywhere using our identity as the entry point to wherever we want to get. So with Nostr, we already know that we have private and public key for our identity. I don't think that it's developed enough today. We're very early when it comes to Nostr, but we have the architecture there. So in a similar fashion to Bitcoin, we can start building tools to verify and authenticate our identity when we hold the key and not the government or not the state. So that's already one way that we can start looking at that, and we need to encourage the Nostr builders to continue in that direction. And I definitely think that when it comes to other privacy tools and hardware and software, all on the digital layer, it's super important to become educated and know what it is that you have available for you and educate yourself. I know Freddie, for example, at Bitcoin Policy UK is doing a great job with putting toolkits together, and many other people want to just educate people about that. Ben BTC Session is starting a new channel for sovereignty tools as well. So this is super important right now. All of that is on the digital layer, and then I think the best resistance is really on the spiritual level. And that is developing who you are as a person. What are your values? What do you stand for? What is your mission? Because when you have that flashed out, you really have sovereignty. You really can say no if something comes to your doorstep and you hate it. You don't want to do it. You don't have to be coerced to do it. You can find ways to say no if you have enough stamina, enough stability in the face of that pressure. And that's something that I think most of us neglect to do. We don't look at who we are and what we care about and what we stand for when that pressure arrives. And I think that's a conversation, a tough one or a complicated one, that most of us should start having with ourselves.
But most people don't really understand why it's necessary. When we talk about it to people, they probably look at you as if you're a little bit crazy, a little bit over the top, every single day. Yeah. So when it comes to privacy, so we've only got a minute and a half left. So just really, really quickly, Leah, starting with you, how do we tell people about the urgency without completely blackpilling them?
Ooh, I would say focusing more on agency instead of helplessness.
Yes.
That it's actually not a scary conversation, it's an empowering one.
Yeah, incredible. William.
Proof. Just prove it. I mean, go see on your own eyes. It's already happening. It's out there. It's nearly. It's not even really a question of the urgency. I mean, it's local. It's not global. You know. So if you have a proof that it's working, and actually, if the person that you know can actually show you, that's the first step.
Incredible. Efrat, 10 seconds.
Be the change you want to see in the world. You be that. They see it. They want to be like you.
Incredible. Tony.
If you're tired of your life, if you find things incredibly expensive, you hate asking for permission, you hate dealing with headaches from folks that have no business giving you one, there are solutions. They are available to anyone. You just need to opt out. You don't have to live in this dystopia. As of 2009, that entire world became optional for 8.3 billion people. And the more tyrannical it gets, the more it incentivizes the prevalence of the solutions to help you opt out. You just have to take that first step.
Incredible. And that's what has been so fantastic about this panel, is because we're not just talking about the problems, we are talking about the solutions. So thank you so much. We are out of time.
Thank you very much.